What?
It's me. It's Josh.
Coach Bob!
No! Shut! I'm your best friend. Please, you can't believe me. I'll prove it to you, right? Billy, please!
So it took Tom Hanks a couple of attempts to become the Tom Hanks that you and I and the movie industry know and love today. He broke out of TV work doing shows like Taxi, Happy Days and Family Ties and made a splash with Splash and Dragnet, but also had a couple of duds like The Money Pit and The Man with the Red Shoe. And it wasn't until 1988's Big, the perfect role for him, that he'd launch into the next few decades of global megastardom. Let's take a look. So Big introduces us to Josh Baskin, and being a 12-year-old, he's feeling that anxious frustration of being stuck between childhood and adulthood. He can't quite get on the big rides at the fairground, his parents still treat him like a little kid, and that slightly older girl has caught his eye and sent his hormones into hyperdrive. So out of frustration, he does what any one of us would do, and he makes a wish on a cheap fortune teller machine, the creepy Zoltar, and wishes that he could be big.
Make my wish. Right. I wish I were big.
I love that subtle and spooky moment after the wish is granted where Josh realises that the Zoltar machine's not even plugged in. Guys, I'm Stephen at Real Classic Film Reviews, and today we're looking at 1988's Big. But on this channel I cover a huge assortment of classic movies from the whole history of cinema, so hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to stay up to date with much more classic film. Anyway, with a bit of hey presto, the next day Josh finds himself a little boy in the body of a grown-up Tom Hanks. And cue a great bit of comedy as he obviously has no idea how to explain himself to his understandably hysterical mother, who all of a sudden has a random dude coming into her home.
It's me. It's Josh. Mom, I'm grown.
Stop it!
Mom, I made a wish last night. I turned into a grown-up, Mom. I made this wish on the machine. And it turned me into a grown-up. It was last night at the carnival.
Also, being a 12-year-old as well, his buddy Billy, Jared Rushton, is slightly more understanding and helps Josh flee his family home to make his way into New York City, which looking back now seems like a super risky move considering the dive they check into, complete with a filth-ridden prison-style room and the sound of gunshots just outside.
Well, I don't want to stay here by myself.
I can't help it, Josh. I gotta be home by 10.
Whilst hiding out in the Big Apple, here they'll simply plot to find the fortune teller machine, make another wish and go back to Josh's normal life. However, things get complicated when Josh lands a job with the Macmillan Toy Corporation, nailing it due to his unique and secret insights into what young kids really demand from toys. He also manages to impress his sophisticated co-worker, Susan Lawrence, a great turn here by Elizabeth Perkins. She's dating the company slimeball, the ambitious Paul Davenport, played by John Heard, and finds Josh's innocence and literal boyish charm an attractive proposition. The pair share some great scenes with Josh helping her to loosen up a little and find some fun amongst the corporate rat race.
Come on! I'll do it with you, all right? To show you how to do it. Ready? Come on. Jump. See? Just this. That's how it is. That's how it is. Good. There you go. There you go. Yeah.
And what we get from here on is a whistle-stop tour of how a 12-year-old negotiates the landscapes of relationships, big city life and having a job, which is something I'm sure the best of us are still struggling with today. So Big was directed by Penny Marshall, who does a great job of taking a potentially cheesy subject matter and injecting it with just enough bittersweet so that we feel for Josh when everything begins to unravel for him. Not because of some lofty adult issues, but simply because he misses his parents. Of course, it's really a film about living out our fantasies. Josh's job not only allows him to play with toys all day long, but also pays enough for him to have a huge Manhattan loft apartment that he can skateboard around that's full of vending machines and trampolines. Hanks also gets to impress his boss, played by Robert Loggia, by essentially getting caught arsing around in one of New York's and the world's most famous toy stores. The piano scene here in FAO Schwartz being one of the standout scenes of 80s cinema.
Neat.
And this could have been a really goofy cartoon role. Instead, Hanks gives us a pretty believable man-child. He doesn't seem like an adult pretending to be a kid, which could have come off a bit weird, but he seems like he really becomes that kid. He brings Josh alive using a combination of subtle facial expressions and natural body language. And you really do need that in a story like this to steer you away from the absurdity and stop you looking too closely and beginning to question the logic of the whole thing. Because for me personally, watching Big back for the upteenth time, now in adulthood, you can't really help feel for Josh's family back home. You could probably make an entire side movie about the effect that a lost child has on a family. And although you do get a brief scene shared between Josh's friend and Josh's mother, here played really well by Mercedes Ruehl, there's no real sign of a huge manhunt or the police getting involved or anything as serious as that. We do get a quick glimpse of Josh's face on the side of a milk carton, but that's about as far as we go. So one of my rare complaints about Big is that it seems to wrap itself up a little bit too quickly. For me personally, it just starts to get really interesting. And again, I think there's an entirely separate film opportunity where Elizabeth Perkins discovers Josh's secret and how the actual fallout and repercussions of that are negotiated. But despite that, I think the film does provide quite an emotional payoff, even though it's in a bit of a rush to do so. Now, I can't think of another actor who could sell this as well as Tom Hanks. He's obviously done a lot of great work, but in a way I don't think he's ever been as good as he was in Big, or certainly had a role so perfectly suited to his abilities for boyish slapstick. Bizarrely, Robert De Niro was originally interested in the role. It's impossible to imagine that one, but Hanks did get his first Oscar nomination for this role, losing out to Dustin Hoffman that year for Rain Man. Just a quick side note, I'm not sure what was going on in the late 80s, but Big is just one of a mini avalanche of age swap / body swap movies, which kicked off in 87 with Like Father Like Son. And in 1988 alone, we got 18 again, Vice Versa, 14 going on 30, and then Dream a Little Dream in 1989. But Penny Marshall, who incidentally was the sister of Gary Marshall, who directed Pretty Woman, directed quite a rare beast with Big. I think it's a film that you can come at from any age and find some level of appreciation. I've been watching this ever since I was about 10 years old, and I've recently rewatched it with my young son, who also enjoyed it, but I'm sure for completely different reasons than I do now. I think it ages really well, and in fact I can imagine it's probably more endearing and memorable for adults. Big definitely stands out as a classic and the springboard for Tom Hanks' domination of the 80s and 90s, with mega hits like Sleepless in Seattle, Forrest Gump and the Toy Story movies on the way. Go check it out.
We sure had fun, didn't we?
Yeah, we sure did.
Ah!